Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now celebrating 17 years of broadcasting success, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, both for our radio audience and those tuning in online around the world. Thanks to our friends at iHeartRadio. We're glad you guys could be with us as well. Well, in the times that we're living in today, I think all of us try to stay informed. I guess the question becomes, though, where do you get your news? Is it something that's trusted? And also, can you rely on what you're reading to be able to be honest and factual? Our next guest is someone who's been on our program before discussing the great work that National Geographic has done, and they have a brand new book that is so timely for the time that we're living in today. It's called Breaking the News: What's Real, What's Not, and Why the Difference Matters. We're so excited to welcome back Susan Goldberg. She's the editor-in-chief of National Geographic. We'll talk to her about the new book, about the history of the news that it takes us through, but also why it's important for us to make sure that we're getting the news that not only matters, but also is factual as well. Susan, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Cyrus. We so appreciate being here.
Well, Susan, one of the things you mentioned in the foreword of this book, you say this, at National Geographic, I like to say that our journalism is on the side of science, on the side of facts, and on the side of the planet. And definitely we've seen through the different work that National Geographic has done, science is such a big part of that. But why has it been so important, especially now, Susan, to make sure that people understand the importance of not only what they're reading being factual, but also something that they can be able to trust and share?
Well, it is so important because all of us are bombarded by information 24/7, and often we don't really know where that information is coming from. Back in the old days, there were so many fewer purveyors of information, and printing presses were expensive things, so not everybody could just put information out there. But right now, with the Internet, everybody can pass along information, and so we all get information from so many sources. Often we don't know where it's coming from, and it's hard to know whether or not we can trust it. This book tries to give people tools that they can use, how to discern the real from the fake.
And I think that's why it's so important. And I love the fact that this book, once again, as National Geographic is known for, Susan, takes us into the history and also reminds us of where we've come from and how we got to where we are. One of the big things in Chapter 3 that I thought would be interesting for our audience here, because I know they've seen this online and things have definitely been debunked. There are questions throughout the book, and one of the questions in Chapter 3 is, have you heard a celebrity or politician tell a story and found out later that it wasn't true? I think we all have. But is that kind of to the point there, Susan, that one want to make sure that even though it may be someone that is on television, someone who has a lot of followers, doesn't necessarily mean that what they're sharing with us is the truth, and that the importance of us to be able to do our part in checking it?
Well, what this book really tries to do is to get people to think before they click. And it really often only takes a couple of minutes to check out whether that outrageous rumor that you've just heard or what that celebrity just said is true. One of the first things you want to do is see if this big earth-shattering thing that you're hearing, is anybody else covering it, or is it just coming from this one place? Because if it is a big and important story, lots of people are going to be covering it, whether it's the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or ABC or CNN or Fox News or wherever it's coming from. A lot of different people are going to be covering really important stories. Now, they might cover them in different ways, but at least you'll know that the basic story is what's really happening. It doesn't take very long at all to figure that out.
Such a great point. And I will say this, too. There's a lot of importance right now and a lot of attention, Susan, as our audience knows as well, put on young people these days when it comes to information. In Chapter 5, one of the things that's mentioned there are a lot of great facts that's shared throughout this book. But one of the facts that's shared in Chapter 5 when it comes to clickbait is that a study found that young people are among the most likely to read clickbait. And I think we can definitely go a step further in sharing it, right, without even checking to see its accuracy. Talk to us about the pros and cons here, because, I mean, social media has definitely connected us, especially during this pandemic, right, where we're not all kind of getting out there together. But talk to us about what National Geographic hopes in this book we realize about the importance of fact-checking these things even before we share things that may seem like they're news.
Well, I think everybody wants to be a good digital citizen, right? I don't think very many people come at it. There might be some bad actors out there, but I think most people come at it and they want to, share news that is real news. And what this allows us to do is to help avoid spreading that false information, or even sometimes that information could harm people. And one of the things the book points out is about a third of young people say that they've shared a news story they later found out was fake or inaccurate. And, people don't feel good when they do that. And this has just lots of practical tips to tell real news from fake, how to tell if a photo has been doctored, how to tell if a website itself is a real website. So I think it's very practical, not just for young people, for adults too. I learned a lot reading this book.
Yeah. You mentioned the bad actors, and one of the things that I think is still in people's mind, because we are in an election year in the United States, Susan, is the 2016 election. One of the things that's also, going back to Chapter 3 that's mentioned, talking about fake posts and fake news, that the book shares that fake Facebook posts created by Russians were received by some 29 million Americans leading up to the 2016 election. And this chapter also does another thing that brings up about propaganda, too. Talk to us about that, because this isn't a new thing. One of the things that's in the book that I never heard about was for what happened in 1983 with the German magazine said to have been able to obtain these secret diaries. This isn't anything that's new, but do you think now that social media has kind of amplified this?
Exactly. Those Hitler diaries in 1983, they turned out to be totally false. And one of the things that this book makes clear is, there's been lots of hoaxes perpetrated throughout history. Now people refer to it as fake news. People used to either call that propaganda if it had a political bent, or just a flat-out hoax. But this makes that very clear. One of the things that's difficult is we're all hardwired as human beings to tend to believe what people tell us. And especially when we hear the same messages over and over again, that's when, things seem like that must be true because we hear it all of the time. But that is one of the most prevalent ways to really spread propaganda. It's how propagandists work. You say it and you say it and you say it. Even if it isn't true, people tend to believe it. So what this book urges people to do is to act like an editor, right? To question everything and to, be a curious expression in journalism I really like. And it's that if your mother says she loves you, check it out. What's that? Of course your mother loved you. But, what it really means is just make sure that what you're hearing is true. And it's really not that hard. There are even websites like Snopes or PolitiFact that are devoted to sussing out whether or not a story is true.
Yeah. Well, definitely where we get our news has definitely evolved, as this book shows, even YouTube, which it's so interesting to me. I never thought about, Susan, before last year that people actually got their news from YouTube, that there are actually news channels there designated on YouTube that people watch. But I guess the great thing, and you alluded to this, and I definitely took this away from the book, is making sure that we're doing our part, especially not only, of course, researching, but also before sharing, because that's where we find a lot of people, unfortunately, do not always check into things. They just continue to share, and then you have this information that's out there. What is your hope, Susan, as people are kind of enjoying this book, and it really is great for all ages, I think. What do you hope breaking the news kind of does for them in the conversations we're having today about the news?
I think I really hope this will make people more media literate and more informed consumers. It's very important, especially in the environment that we're living in, where there is so much inaccurate information flying around, to be able to tell the real from the false. And so people just don't spread things willy-nilly, because it is so easy to pass on bad information. I think this book is just full of really practical tips about ways to tell whether something is true or not. And, to me, it would just be wonderful if people could just be better and more informed consumers. Because what we all desperately need information. We just have to make sure it's real information.
So true. Again, everyone, Susan Goldberg is our guest once again, the editor-in-chief of National Geographic, the new book, Breaking the News, What's Real, What's Not, and Why the Difference Matters. It's available through our friends at Amazon.com or through your favorite bookstore. Susan, congratulations to the team and you for another great book, and looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you so much, Cyrus. I really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Let's make today amazing. Take care.